On my wedding day, my father stormed out of the chapel. He said I wasn't his real priority. Then a silver-haired stranger offered his arm at the back of the aisle. He was the CEO of my dad's company, a man whose name was whispered in our house like a threat. And he was my biological great-uncle. This is how a 5-minute walk became a 26-year mystery, and how the man who raised me chose to miss the most important day of my life. My name is Alara Vance. For 26 years, I believed my father's distance was just his personality, but his exit that day exposed a deeper truth. Our entire family history was built on a single, deliberate omission. This is the story of the lie that defined my childhood, the powerful stranger who held its key, and the moment a walk down the aisle became a journey into the past. To understand how we got there, you have to go back to the beginning, to the story my father never wanted me to hear. I grew up in the shadow of my father's ambition, in a house where love felt like a transaction. My dad, Robert Vance, was a mid-level operations manager at Sterling Dynamics, a global tech conglomerate. For 30 years, he poured his life into a company that never knew his name. His boss's boss's boss was a man named Alastair Sterling, a figure so distant he was practically mythology in our home. Dad would come home, shoulders slumped, and say the same thing every night. "The man doesn't know I exist, but I keep his empire running." My mother, Helen, was his quiet accomplice. She believed his frustration was a sign of dedication. My older sister, Chloe, was his perfect reflection. She mirrored his cynicism, his focus on status, his belief that the world was a ladder and everyone else was a rung. And then there was me, the question mark, the dreamer, the one who looked at the stars while he was counting steps on the corporate staircase. Our family photo from 1998 tells the whole story. Dad, arm around Chloe, both smiling at the camera. Mom, slightly behind them, her hand on Chloe's shoulder. And me on the edge, my head turned like I was watching something just outside the frame. I was 4 years old. The pattern was already set. Childhood is a series of small cuts that you don't feel bleed until you're much older. For me, it was the science fair in 5th grade. I built a simple circuit board that could light up in patterns. I worked on it for 2 months. The night before, Dad came into my room. He didn't look at the board. He said, "Your sister has her junior ballet recital tomorrow. It's a big deal, we'll be there." I said, "My fair is at the same time." He paused in the doorway. "Alara, be realistic. Which event do you think matters more?" He didn't wait for an answer. I took second place at the fair. A teacher drove me home. My trophy sat on the kitchen counter for a week, next to a huge bouquet of flowers for Chloe. No one asked what it was for. That was the unspoken rule. Chloe's achievements were celebrated. Mine were tolerated if they were noticed at all. I learned to find validation elsewhere. In books. In building things. In the quiet logic of code. By high school, I was spending more time in the computer lab than at home. When I was 16, I developed a simple app that helped organize library inventories. It won a regional tech competition. The local paper did a small write-up. Local teens' innovation could help small businesses. Dad read the article at the breakfast table. He put it down, took a sip of coffee, and said, "Cute, but real value is built in boardrooms, not basements." He left for work. Chloe, who was home from her first year of college, smirked from across the table. "It's right, hobbies are fine, but you need a real plan." I didn't argue. Arguing required them to be listening in the first place. But here's the thing about being ignored. It gives you a kind of freedom. You stop performing for an audience that isn't there. You start building for yourself. And sometimes what you build in the shadows gets seen by the wrong person, or the right one. The summer after my freshman year of college, I landed an internship, not through my father's connections at Sterling. I got it on my own merit at a small but respected software startup. My project was to optimize their data flow. I worked nights. I slept 4 hours a night, and I created an algorithm that reduced their processing time by 40%. My boss was so impressed he presented it at an industry meetup. He didn't mention my name, just called me a brilliant intern. But the code spoke for itself. A week later, my boss called me, his voice tight with something I couldn't place. "Alara, we need to talk in person." I thought I was in trouble. I thought my algorithm had failed. I walked into his office and he was pale. "Sit down," he said. He slid a single sheet of paper across his desk. It was a letter, thick, creamy stationery, a letterhead I recognized from my father's discarded work memos. The Sterling Dynamics logo. The letter was addressed to my boss. It thanked him for showcasing such innovative work at the meetup. It expressed a keen interest in the mind behind the algorithm. It was signed by the office of Alastair Sterling, chairman and CEO. My boss pointed to a handwritten postscript at the bottom. The handwriting was sharp, precise. Please extend my personal congratulations to your intern. The future of this industry belongs to thinkers like her. I stared at the words. Alastair Sterling knew I existed. My boss leaned forward. Alara, who is your father? I told him. Robert Vance in operations. My boss sat back, his chair creaking. Well, he said slowly, he's about to have a very interesting performance review. I took the bus home that night, my mind racing. I decided not to tell my father. I thought the news would come through official channels. I thought it would be a quiet note, maybe a transfer to a better department. I was naive. I didn't understand how corporate royalty operated or how deeply my father's fear of that man was rooted. 2 days later, the storm hit. Dad came home from work and didn't take off his coat. He stood in the middle of the living room, his keys still in his hand. Alara. His voice was quiet, deadly quiet. My director called me into his office today. He said Alastair Sterling himself asked about a project I had nothing to do with. He asked why I hadn't taken credit for my own daughter's work. I froze. I didn't tell anyone, Dad. It doesn't matter. He shouted, the sound making my mother flinch. Don't you see? You made me look like a fool. You made it look like I was hiding talent from the executive floor. He thinks I'm incompetent or worse, disloyal. Chloe came downstairs, a smug look on her face. What did she do now? Dad turned his fury on me. She decided to play genius where the big boys work. And now the CEO thinks I'm a liability. That was the moment. The exact second the tectonic plates of my life shifted. My achievement wasn't a source of pride. It was a threat to his fragile position. He saw Alastair Sterling's attention not as an honor, but as a spotlight shining on his own inadequacy. I tried to explain. It was just an algorithm. It wasn't about you. He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Everything in that company is about me, my reputation, my 30 years of thankless work. And you, with your little project, just put a target on my back. He threw his keys onto the table. You will decline any further contact from Sterling's office. You will tell your boss the project was a team effort. You will bury this. Do you understand me? I looked at my mother. She was studying the pattern on the rug. I looked at Chloe, who was smiling. I felt something harden inside me, a cold, clear certainty. No, I said. The word hung in the air. My father's face went from red to white. What did you say? I said no, I won't bury it, it's my work. He took a step toward me. While you live under my roof, you follow my rules. Then I won't live under your roof. The words were out before I could think, but I knew they were true. I packed a single bag that night. My mother cried silently in the hallway. Chloe watched from her bedroom door, her expression unreadable. My father stood at the front door, his arms crossed. You walk out that door, you're not my daughter. You're not my priority. You understand? You choose this path, you're on your own. I looked at him, at the man who had always seen me as background noise. You never made me a priority, Dad. I'm just making it official. I left. I had $400 in my bank account, a laptop, and the clothes on my back. I didn't know it then, but my father meant every word. For the next 5 years, he would treat me as if I had ceased to exist. And he had no idea that the man he feared most, Alastair Sterling, had just begun his search for the granddaughter he never knew he had. The first 90 days were a lesson in survival. I crashed on a friend's couch, took a job as a barista, and coded freelance projects between shifts. My father kept his word. My calls went to voicemail. My emails bounced back. I was a ghost. But in the silence, something unexpected happened. I stopped trying to earn a love that was never offered. And I started building a life that was entirely mine. The algorithm that started the fire, a venture capital firm reached out. They'd heard about it through the industry grapevine. They offered me a contract to develop it further. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a lifeline. I rented a studio apartment with a window that faced a brick wall. It was perfect. No one could look in. I could focus. For 2 years, I lived in that bubble of code and ambition. I graduated college a semester early. I turned the contract work into a full-time position at a growing fintech company. I was promoted twice. I bought a used car. I was building something solid, brick by brick, in the quiet. And the entire time, 3,000 miles away in a corner office at the top of Sterling Tower, a parallel investigation was unfolding, one I knew nothing about. Alastair Sterling wasn't a man who forgot a promising mind. His note to my boss wasn't a polite gesture. It was a starting point. He had his executive assistant, a woman named Evelyn Reed who was famously discreet, look into me. Standard due diligence for a potential recruitment, but what she found didn't make sense. The brilliant intern was the daughter of a middling operations manager in his own company, a manager who had never once listed her as a dependent for benefits, who had never mentioned her in 30 years of service reviews. To Sterling, that was a red flag. Either the man was hiding something or he was profoundly negligent. He asked for more. Evelyn dug deeper. She found my mother's maiden name. She found a marriage certificate from 1985, and she found a birth certificate for my mother, Helen, that listed a father's name that made her stop cold. She took the file to Alastair's office. He was on a call with Tokyo. She placed it on his desk and waited. He finished the call, put on his reading glasses, and opened the folder. He read the first page, then the second. He took off his glasses, rubbed the bridge of his nose, and looked out at the city. "Evelyn," he said, his voice very quiet. "This says Helen Carter is my brother's daughter." "Yes, sir," Evelyn said. "Robert Vance married Helen Carter in 1985. Alara Vance is their second child, born in 1994. Alastair Sterling stood up. His brother, Julian, had been the family's black sheep, a brilliant artist who wanted nothing to do with the corporate world. He'd fallen in love with a waitress, gotten her pregnant, and then died in a car accident before my mother was even born. The family, ashamed, had paid off the mother. They'd erased the incident. My grandmother took the money and a new last name and raised my mother alone, telling her father was a soldier who died overseas. The Sterlings thought the line ended there. They had no idea Julian had a daughter, and they certainly had no idea that daughter had a daughter of her own. Me. Alastair looked at Evelyn. "Does Robert Vance know?" "I cannot say for certain, sir, but his personnel file indicates he listed his father-in-law as deceased, military. He either believes the story or he is maintaining the fiction. And the girl, Alara, she appears to have no knowledge of the connection. She was raised as a Vance." Alastair Sterling closed the folder. His face was unreadable. "Keep this between us. I want a full dossier on her, everything, academic, professional, personal, but do not make contact." "Not yet. Why would a man like Alastair Sterling hesitate? This is where the story twists. It wasn't sentiment, it was strategy. He saw two problems. First, a potential scandal. The press would feast on the story of the billionaire CEO discovering a long-lost great-niece working in a coffee shop after being disowned by her father, one of his own employees. Second, and more importantly, he saw an asset. My work on that algorithm proved I had the kind of mind he valued. But was I loyal? Was I resilient? Or was I a liability waiting to crack under family drama? He decided to wait, to watch. He had Evelyn monitor my career from a distance. Every promotion, every project, every line of code I wrote in the public domain. He was conducting a 5-year audit of my character, and I had no idea I was being graded. Meanwhile, my father's world was shrinking. His fear of exposure became a self-fulfilling prophecy. After I left, his performance at work suffered. Paranoia set in. He was convinced Sterling was watching him, waiting for him to fail. He turned down a lateral move to a different department, fearing it was a trap. He became isolated. My sister Chloe, ever the loyalist, doubled down on her alliance with him. She moved back home after a failed relationship and took a job in Sterling's marketing department, a fact she made sure I knew through a terse Christmas card I received at my old address, forwarded by a neighbor. The card just said, "Thriving at Sterling. Some of us value family." I threw it away. The third year of silence, I met Leo. He was a graphic designer who worked in the building next to mine. We bonded over terrible office coffee and a shared love of obscure 80s synth music. He was the first person I told the whole story to, not the Sterling part but the father part, the disownment. He listened, didn't flinch, and then said, "His loss is my gain, more of you for me." It was the kind of simple, unwavering acceptance I didn't know I needed. When he proposed 2 years later, on a rainy pier with a ring he designed himself, I said yes without a second of doubt. We planned a small wedding. A chapel, 30 guests, simple. I debated sending an invitation to my parents. Leo said it was my choice. I decided to send one, not out of hope but out of closure, a final test. I addressed it to all 4 of them, Robert, Helen, Chloe, and a +1 for Chloe. I mailed it to the house I grew up in. A week later it came back, returned to sender, unopened. But someone had scrawled a single word across the front in black marker in my father's handwriting. No, that was it. That was the answer. I showed it to Leo. He took it, put it in a drawer, and said, "Then we know where we stand." But here, where Alastair Sterling's surveillance finally intersected with my life, Evelyn, monitoring my public records for any alerts, saw the marriage license application. She saw the date, she saw the location. She printed the details and placed them on Alastair's desk. He read them, he leaned back in his chair. "The father is not walking her down the aisle." It wasn't a question. "It appears not, sir," Evelyn said. Her relationship with the Vances remains severed. Alastair was silent for a long time. He thought of his brother Julian, denied the chance to ever walk his own daughter down the aisle. He thought of a young woman, his blood, being abandoned at a milestone because of a lie his family had helped create. And he saw, finally, a strategic opportunity. A gesture that would secure loyalty, resolve a moral debt, and send a very clear message to a certain operations manager. He looked at Evelyn. Clear my schedule for that Saturday, and send a car to the Vance residence the Friday before. Deliver a message from me to Robert Vance. Evelyn waited. The message, sir. Alastair Sterling allowed himself a small, cold smile. Tell him I'll be seeing him on Saturday, and that I'll be taking care of a family matter he so clearly neglected. The Friday before my wedding, my father was in his weekly operations meeting when his assistant rushed in, which she never did. She whispered in his ear. His face drained of color. He excused himself and walked to the lobby. There, a man in a dark suit stood waiting. He handed my father a sealed envelope on thick, cream-colored Sterling stationery. Compliments of Mr. Sterling, sir. He asked that you read this prior to tomorrow's events. The man left. My father's hands shook as he opened it. The note was brief. Robert, I will be attending the wedding of Alara Vance tomorrow to fulfill a familial obligation you have declined. I suggest you reflect on where your true priorities lie. Your absence has been noted. A.S. My father told my mother later that he felt the ground fall away. The CEO wasn't just aware of the wedding. He was going. He was taking my father's place. In my father's mind, this wasn't an act of kindness toward me. It was a corporate execution, a public demotion. Sterling was firing him as a father. He stormed into the house, threw the note on the kitchen table, and said to my mother, "He's trying to humiliate me in front of everyone." My mother, for the first time, pushed back. "Maybe he's just trying to be there for her, Robert, since you won't." He turned on her. "Whose side are you on? That man is using our daughter to get at me. Don't you see that?" Chloe, of course, took his side. "It's a power move, Mom. Sterling is ruthless. Alara's probably in on it. She probably reached out to him to get back at Dad." The fight raged all night. My father made his decision. If Sterling was going to be there, he could not be. His presence would be an acknowledgement of the CEO's authority over his own family. His absence would be his only form of protest. A stupid, prideful, devastating protest. My wedding day. I was in the bridal room at the back of the chapel, putting on my earrings. My hands were steady. Leo's father was going to walk me down the aisle. It was a kind solution. But a part of me, a childish, hopeful part, was listening for the door. Listening for my father to change his mind. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. "He's not coming, Alara, I'm so sorry, I tried." I read it, I put the phone down, I finished putting on my earrings. Then there was a commotion in the hallway, raised voices. I heard my father's voice, loud and angry. "Let me through, I need to see her." My heart leapt. Then it sank just as fast. This wasn't a change of heart, this was a confrontation. I opened the door. He was there, still in his work clothes, his face flushed. He looked at me in my wedding dress, and for a second I saw something flicker in his eyes, something like regret. It was gone in an instant. "You need to call this off," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Dad, listen to me. Alastair Sterling is here. Do you understand what that means? He's not here for you. He's here to destroy me, to make me a laughingstock. If you walk down that aisle with him, you are choosing him over your own family." I stared at him. The music was starting in the chapel. The ceremony was beginning. "He's here?" I asked, confused. "In a car out front, his driver. He's waiting for you to come out so he can make his grand entrance." My father grabbed my arm. "Tell them you're sick. We'll leave. We can fix this as a family." I pulled my arm away. I looked at him, at the panic in his eyes. It wasn't about me. It was never about me. It was about him, his job, his pride, his war with a ghost he could never defeat. "No," I said. "My family is in that chapel. You made your choice 5 years ago." He stepped back as if I'd slapped him. His face hardened. "Fine, you want him, you got him. Just remember, when this blows up in your face, you're not my real priority. You stopped being my daughter the day you walked out." He turned and stormed down the hallway, pushing past the wedding coordinator. I heard the heavy chapel door slam shut. I stood there, shaking. The coordinator approached me, her face worried. "Miss Vance, we're ready when you are. Your escort is waiting at the back of the chapel." I took a deep breath. I had no idea who was waiting. Leo's father, a friend? I smoothed my dress, took my bouquet, and walked to the entrance of the chapel. The doors were closed. Through the stained glass, I could see the blurred shapes of our guests standing. The music swelled. The coordinator nodded. "Okay, go." The doors opened. 30 faces turned to look at me. But at the end of the aisle, where Leo's father should have been, stood a different man. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. He stood with a quiet, imposing stillness. Alastair Sterling. He met my gaze and gave the smallest, most solemn nod. Then he offered me his arm. I took his arm. What else could I do? The music was playing, every guest was watching. My father's words, "You're not my real priority," were still ringing in my ears as I walked toward my future, escorted by a ghost from my past. Alastair Sterling's arm was firm. He leaned in just slightly as we walked. His voice was low for me alone. "You look radiant, Alara. Your grandfather would have been proud." My grandfather. The words made no sense. I kept my smile fixed, my eyes on Leo, who stood at the altar looking equal parts confused and concerned. The walk felt like it took an hour. When we reached the front, Alastair gave my hand a gentle, formal squeeze, nodded to Leo, and then took a seat in the front row, right where a father should sit. The ceremony was a blur. I said my vows. Leo said his. We exchanged rings, but my mind was racing, trying to solve the equation that had just been written in the air. CEO, Great Uncle. Grandfather. The moment the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, Leo kissed me, and the chapel erupted in applause. Alastair Sterling was the first to stand. He didn't clap. He just gave that same solemn nod, as if approving a business deal that had finally closed. The reception was held in the chapel's small garden. As we mingled, Alastair kept a respectful distance, speaking only to a few of Leo's relatives who had no idea who he was. My friends from the tech world, however, recognized him instantly. I saw the whispers, the widened eyes, the phones discreetly raised to take pictures. The story was already leaking. Sterling Dynasty heir wedding crasher, I could see the headlines. I finally broke away and approached him. He was standing alone near a rose trellis. "Mr. Sterling," I began. He held up a hand. "Alastair, please, we are family after all." "That's what I need to understand," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You said my grandfather would be proud. My grandfathers are both dead. One was a mechanic, the other was a soldier." He studied my face, his gaze analytical, assessing. "The soldier story, yes, a useful fiction." He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a small, worn photograph. He handed it to me. It showed a young man with wild hair and paint-splattered jeans, laughing, his arm around a beautiful woman with my mother's eyes. "Julian Sterling," Alastair said. "My younger brother." "The artist, the rebel, your biological grandfather." I stared at the photo. The resemblance to my mother was uncanny. "He got your grandmother pregnant. He wanted to marry her. Our father forbade it. She was, in his words, unsuitable. Julian died in a crash before your mother was born. My father paid your grandmother a substantial sum to disappear and change her name. He thought he was protecting the family from scandal. He was really erasing a branch of his own tree." I felt the ground tilt. My mother doesn't know. She was told a story and she believed it, as did the man she married. Your father, Robert, married Helen Carter, not knowing Carter was an invented name. He believed he was marrying a woman with no family, no connections. It suited his narrative of being the sole provider. The pieces began to snap together with terrible clarity. My father's paranoia wasn't just about office politics. It was about a fundamental insecurity. He'd married a woman he believed was beneath him, only to later discover or suspect that she might be connected to the very empire he served, and that his own daughter might have a claim to a world that would always exclude him. "He knows, doesn't he?" I asked. "Some of it, I suspect he pieced together fragments over the years. A forgotten letter, an old photo. My brother Julian was not a secret within the family, only his child was. Your father is a clever man, he connects dots. I believe he realized your mother was a Sterling heir long before I did, and it terrified him. Why? Because if it was true, then you were not his daughter to mold. You were Sterling blood, and your success wouldn't reflect on him, it would threaten him. It would prove you belonged to a world he could never access, no matter how many years he logged in my operations department." He took the photo back. "My appearance today was not merely kindness, Alara, it was a correction. A public acknowledgement of a long-standing error, and a message to your father that his silence on this matter is over." While we were talking, my father was enacting his own finale. He hadn't driven home. He'd driven to Sterling Tower. It was Saturday, the building was nearly empty. He used his key card, took the elevator to the executive floor, and walked straight to Alastair Sterling's closed office door. He was met by security, but he was still an employee, and he was frantic. He demanded to wait. He said he had to speak to Sterling about a family emergency. They put him in a small conference room. He sat there for 2 hours, sweating through his shirt, watching the clock on the wall tick toward the moment I would become a wife without him. He was still there when Alastair's assistant, Evelyn, arrived to prepare for a Monday meeting. She found him, a broken man in a rumpled suit, staring at the table. She called security. But before they arrived, my father looked at her and said, Tell him he won, tell him he can have her, she was never really mine anyway. Security escorted him out. He drove home, walked into the house, and told my mother and Chloe that it was over, that Sterling had claimed me, that the truth was out. My mother, for the first time in her life, demanded answers. What truth, Robert? What are you talking about? He broke down. He told her everything he'd suspected. The discrepancies in her birth certificate he'd found years ago when applying for a passport. The sealed letter from a law firm he'd found in her mother's things after she died, mentioning a settlement. His growing certainty that her father was not a soldier but someone connected to the Sterlings. He'd kept it from her, he said, to protect her, to protect them. My mother listened, her face pale. Then she slapped him. Hard. You protected me, you lied to me. You let me believe a story about my own father, and you punished my daughter for a secret she didn't even know. She packed a bag and left. She checked into a hotel. She called the only person she could think of, Evelyn Reed, whose number was on the note sent to the house. She left a message. This is Helen Vance. I need to speak to Alistair Sterling. I believe he is my uncle. Alistair received the message on his car ride back from my wedding. He told his driver to take him to the hotel. He met my mother in the lobby. She showed him the few documents she had. He confirmed it all. He apologized for his family's cruelty. He offered her resources, support, whatever she needed. My mother asked for only one thing. I want to meet my daughter, my real daughter, without her father in the way. Back at the wedding, Leo and I were cutting the cake when my phone buzzed. A number I didn't know. I ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Finally, I excused myself. It was my mother. Her voice was raw, shaky. Ilara, baby, it's Mom. I'm so sorry for everything. I left him. I know things now. Can I see you? I walked into the empty chapel, the echoes of our celebration still hanging in the air. Mom, what's going on? Where are you? At the plaza, room 412. Alistair, my uncle, he's here with me. He explained everything. Your father, he knew Ilara. He knew who my father was, and he hid it from me, from us. I leaned against a pew. The world had cracked open twice in one day. I'll be there after we finish here, I said. Don't come to the house. Don't talk to Dad. I won't, she said and started to cry. I just want my daughter back. I returned to the reception, but the party was over for me. Leo saw it on my face. He wrapped an arm around me. Whatever it is, we'll handle it together. We left shortly after. We drove to the plaza. Walking into that hotel room was like stepping into an alternate universe. My mother, eyes swollen, sitting on a sofa, and Alistair Sterling in an armchair looking like a king holding court. He stood when I entered. Ilara, Leo, thank you for coming. The next hour was a crash course in family history. Alistair laid out the facts with clinical precision. The payment, the name change, his father's shame, his own regret at not searching for Julian's child sooner. He presented my mother with a new, legally restored birth certificate. Helen Juliana Sterling. My mother held it and wept. Then he turned to me. For you, Ilara, I have two things. First, an apology. My family's actions deprived you of your legacy. Second, an offer, a position at Sterling Dynamics, head of a new innovation incubator. You would report directly to me. It is not a gift. It is what you have earned. The algorithm you wrote 3 years ago is the foundation of a project we are launching next quarter. We need the mind that created it. I looked at Leo. His expression said, your call. I looked at my mother, who was watching me with a mix of hope and fear. I thought of my father sitting in his dark house believing he had lost everything, and I understood the true scale of Alistair's move. This wasn't rescue, it was a takeover. He was consolidating assets. I was one of them. I need time, I said. Of course, Alistair replied. The offer stands, indefinitely. He left soon after, leaving my mother, Leo, and me in the quiet hotel room. My mother hugged me for a long time. I failed you, she whispered. I was so busy trying to keep the peace, I didn't see the war he was waging against you. That night, I learned the final, devastating piece. My mother, after Alistair left, remembered something. A conversation from years ago. When I was about 10, my father had taken a business trip to New York. He'd come back agitated. He said he'd seen a portrait in the Sterling Corporate Gallery. A painting of a young man that looked unnervingly familiar. He'd asked who it was. He was told it was Julian Sterling, the founder's son who died young. My mother said he'd been quiet for weeks after that. She now believed that was the moment he knew. The moment he saw the face of my grandfather and saw the echo in his own wife. And from that day forward, every achievement of mine was not a reflection of him, but a reminder that I was, by blood, a Sterling, and he was just an employee. The wedding night should have been a celebration. Instead, Leo held me as I cried from sheer emotional overload. The father I thought was indifferent was actually terrified. The mother I thought was passive was a victim of the same lie. And the powerful stranger who gave me away was the architect of a new, more complicated cage. The next morning, the story broke. A grainy photo of Alastair Sterling offering me his arm was on the business section of the Times website. The headline, Sterling Scion steps in for absent father at employee's wedding. The article was speculative, but it named names. Robert Vance, Alara Vance Sterling. It mentioned my tech background. It was a mess. My phone exploded. My father's phone, I later learned, did too. Human Resources at Sterling Dynamics called him at 7 a.m. Monday. He was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into potential conflicts of interest and ethical breaches. They were digging into whether he used his knowledge of my lineage to secure his position or hide it. The irony was perfect. His greatest fear, being exposed as connected to the Sterlings, was now his professional reality. He called me. I saw his number flash on my screen for the first time in 5 years. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short, shattered. Alara, please, I need to explain. He's destroying me. Please call me back. I didn't. I was done with his explanations. I had a new life to navigate, a new identity to process. I was no longer just Alara Vance, self-made coder. I was Alara Vance, the secret Sterling. And the man who held the key to my past was now offering me the keys to a gilded future. But before I could decide whether to take them, I had to face the one person who had enjoyed this drama from the front row, my sister, Chloe. And she was about to make a move that would change the game for everyone. Chloe didn't wait for an invitation. She showed up at my new apartment 2 days after the wedding while Leo was at work. She stood in the hallway, her face a mask of cold fury, holding a manila folder. "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me into the living room. I closed the door. "This isn't your home, Chloe. You don't just walk in." She ignored me, dropping the folder on the coffee table. "Open it." I didn't move. "Whatever it is, I'm not interested." "It's a dossier," she said, her voice tight. "On you, compiled by Sterling's office. I have a friend in legal who accessed the server. Alastair has been watching you for years. Every job, every project, every grade. He's got psych profiles, financial records, even your medical history. He didn't just find you, he vetted you like a corporate acquisition." I looked at the folder. My name was on the tab, a Sterling Dynamics internal reference code beneath it. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you think he's some benevolent fairy godfather. He's not. You're an asset to him, a potentially profitable one. And the moment you stop being profitable, he'll discard you like he's discarding Dad." I picked up the folder. I flipped it open. She was right. It was a corporate dossier, thorough and cold. Performance reviews from my old internship, transcripts, copies of my published code, even a summary of my freelance client satisfaction rates. It was dated from 3 years ago. The surveillance had started long before the wedding, long before he knew about the family connection. Chloe saw the realization on my face. "He wanted your brain first, Alara. The family thing was just a convenient bonus, a way to secure your loyalty." I closed the folder. "And what do you want, Chloe? Why bring this to me?" Her composure cracked, just for a second. "Because I'm next. Mom's a Sterling now. You're the golden child. Dad's finished. Where does that leave me, the one who stayed loyal? The one who played by his rules? I get nothing." For the first time I saw it, not just anger but terror. Her entire identity was built on being the chosen daughter. Now the chooser was disgraced and the hierarchy she believed in was inverted. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "Turn down the job, publicly. Tell the world you want nothing to do with Sterling's blood money. It's the only way to hurt him. It's the only way to make things fair." I almost laughed. Fair. "You stood by while Dad erased me for 5 years, Chloe. You sent me a gloating Christmas card. You never once reached out, and now you want fairness?" She flinched. "I was protecting my position. You were protecting a lie, just like he was." I handed the folder back to her. "I'm not turning down anything to make you feel better. My decision will be about my future, not your past." She took the folder, her hands shaking. "You're just like him. You're using this to climb." "Maybe," I said. "But the ladder I'm climbing is one I built. He's just offering me a better view from the top." She left without another word. But she didn't go home. She went to the media. She gave an anonymous interview to a business gossip site. The story ran that afternoon. Inside the Sterling Vance feud, spurned sister claims CEO's interest is purely corporate. It quoted a family insider saying Alastair Sterling had been tracking my career for years, and the family revelation was a fortuitous coincidence. He exploited for good press and talent acquisition. It was designed to make me look like a pawn. Instead, it made Alastair look like a genius. The business world shrugged. Of course he vetted a promising talent. That's what good CEOs do. The family drama just made a better story. Chloe's attempt to sabotage me only cemented my narrative as a self-made woman who'd earned the attention. The backlash hit her instead. Sterling's legal department traced the leak. Her friend in legal was fired. Chloe was placed on probation in the marketing department for conduct unbecoming. The walls were closing in on her, and she'd built them herself. Meanwhile, my father's administrative leave turned into a formal investigation. The ethics committee found no evidence he'd used the Sterling connection for gain, because he'd hidden it, not used it, but they found something else. Inconsistencies in his department's budget reports from the years his paranoia was at its peak. Minor discrepancies, likely caused by his neglect, but enough for cause. He was offered a choice: resign with a modest severance or face termination for negligence. He resigned. 30 years ended with a 4-paragraph letter and a sealed box of desk trinkets. My mother filed for legal separation. She started using her birth name, Helen Sterling, a name that felt both foreign and right. She moved into a small apartment Alastair helped her secure, not as charity but as a bridge loan. She got a job at a nonprofit art gallery, finally embracing the creative side she'd inherited from the father she never knew. She called me every day. We started having coffee. It was awkward, tender, and real. We were learning who we were to each other without my father in the middle. 6 weeks after the wedding, I met Alastair for lunch. Not at Sterling Tower, but at a quiet restaurant. He got straight to the point. The dossier your sister leaked, it's real, I believe in due diligence. I needed to know if you were resilient or if family drama would consume your talent. You passed, the offer stands. I took a sip of water. And if I say no, then you say no. I will not contact you again regarding employment. You will still be my great niece. The family connection is separate, I would hope for occasional dinners. He meant it. The businessman in him wanted the asset. The man who'd failed his brother wanted to make amends. Both were true. I have conditions, I said. He raised an eyebrow. Go on. I report to you, but I build my own team. No oversight from Sterling legacy hires. My projects have protected autonomy. And my compensation is based on performance, not lineage. I wanted in writing that my last name doesn't get me a bigger office or a softer deadline. A slow smile spread across his face. It was the first genuine expression I'd seen from him. Agreed, those were my terms as well. Sentiment has no place in a quarterly report. I accepted the job, not because I needed saving, but because it was the best next step for my career. The press had a field day. Secret Sterling heir takes helm of innovation lab. My father saw the headlines. That was the final blow. The day my appointment was officially announced, he showed up at my office building. Security called me. There's a Robert Vance here to see you, Ms. Vance. He's insistent. I told them to send him up. He looked old. His suit was too big. He'd lost weight. He stood in the doorway of my new, empty office, staring at the skyline view I hadn't earned yet but would. You won, he said, not looking at me. I didn't know we were at war, Dad. He finally turned. His eyes were red-rimmed. It was always a war against being invisible, against being less than. I thought if I kept my head down, worked hard, I could win. Then you came along. You were brilliant without trying. You got his attention without begging for it. And I knew you were part of that world, the world that would always look down on me. So you pushed me away. I tried to make you smaller so I could feel bigger. It was the worst mistake of my life. He took a shaky breath. I am so sorry, Alara, for every science fair, every dismissive word, for missing your wedding, for choosing my pride over my daughter. I didn't say it was okay, it was. Thank you for saying that, I said instead. Is there a path back, he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Maybe, not to what we were, that's gone, but to something new. It starts with you getting help, therapy. Real, honest work on why you needed to break your own child to feel whole. He nodded, a tear finally escaping. I'll do it. And you respect my boundaries. You don't call me until I'm ready. You make amends with Mom without expectation. You rebuild your own life separately. Okay. He turned to leave, then stopped. The man who walked you down the aisle, is he a good man? I thought of Alastair's cold calculus, his strategic kindness. He's a complicated man, but he showed up. That's more than you did. He flinched, nodded, and walked out. I didn't see him again for 8 months. He did the work. He found a therapist. He got a job managing a small logistics firm, a step down in prestige but a step toward peace. He sent me a letter after 3 months, not asking for a reply, just updating me on his progress. I read it. I didn't respond. He sent another after 6. I didn't respond. The third letter came after my first major project at Sterling launched successfully. It was a short note. Saw the news, incredible work, I am proud of you for what it's worth from here. Always, Dad. I framed that one. I put it in my desk drawer, not on the wall, not yet, but in the drawer. Chloe eventually left Sterling Dynamics. The environment had become toxic for her. She moved to a smaller city, took a marketing job at a nonprofit. We don't speak. Maybe one day. The wound is too fresh, the betrayal too personal. She needs to find herself outside of our father's shadow and outside of my spotlight. That's her journey now. My mother and I have a standing Sunday dinner. Sometimes Alistair joins. It's stiff, formal, but there's a growing familiarity. He tells stories about Julian, my grandfather. He's trying to give us the history we were denied. Leo and I bought a house, not a mansion. A home with a garden where he can paint and I can code on the porch. We talk about kids someday. They'll know the whole messy story. They'll know where they come from, the lies and the truths. The final surprise came from Evelyn, Alistair's assistant. She retired a year after everything settled. Before she left, she sent me a package. Inside was a small, leather-bound journal, Julian Sterling's journal. The last entry was dated a week before his death. Alistair never knew it existed. Evelyn had found it in the old family archives and kept it, unsure what to do with it. The last page had a single sentence, written in a hurried scrawl. If it's a girl, tell her to be brave. Tell her the world is beautiful and terrible and she has a right to all of it. He was writing to my grandmother, about my mother. He never got to send it. I read it sitting in my garden. I cried for the grandfather I never met, for the bravery he wanted for us. I showed it to my mother. She held it to her chest and wept. Then she framed that page. It hangs in her apartment now, next to the portrait of Julian that used to hang in Sterling Tower. Alistair had it moved to her home, a small act of restoration. So, what happened to the man who stormed out of the chapel? He's learning to live without the armor of his resentment. He's learning that being a father isn't about control, it's about presence. And he's learning that sometimes, the child you try to diminish becomes the mirror that shows you who you really are. And the powerful stranger who offered his arm, he's still a complicated man. A CEO first, a great-uncle second, but he keeps his promises. He gave me a platform, not a pedestal. And in his own calculated way, he brought a broken piece of his family back into the light. My name is Alara Vance. I'm a daughter, a wife, a Sterling, and a self-made woman. The story isn't about a wedding day rescue. It's about what happened after the music stopped. It's about building a life from the pieces others threw away. And it's about learning that the most powerful family you can have is the one you choose, and the one that, against all odds, chooses you back. If you take one thing from this story, let it be this: family isn't a title you're given. It's a choice you make every single day. My wedding wasn't a fairy tale rescue, it was a collision. A moment where decades of secrets and silence finally met the hard surface of truth. The man who walked me down the aisle wasn't a hero. He was a man correcting a historical error. The father who left wasn't a monster. He was a terrified man trapped in a lie of his own making. And I wasn't a princess being saved. I was a woman walking into a new life, dragging every scar and every strength I'd earned along with me. We talk about family estrangement like it's a clean break. It's not, it's a slow unraveling. A series of small abandonments that add up until one day you look up and you're standing in a chapel alone. But here's what they don't tell you. Reconciliation isn't a grand gesture either. It's 1,000 small choices. A letter not thrown away. A boundary held firm. A silent dinner where the only victory is that no one leaves. My story isn't unique. 1 in 4 people are estranged from a family member. Maybe you're the one who was left behind. Maybe you're the one who walked away. Maybe you're somewhere in the middle, trying to hold pieces together that keep cutting your hands. Wherever you are, I want you to hear this. Your worth is not determined by the people who failed to see it. Your legacy is not limited to the name you were given. You can build a family from the friends who show up, the partners who choose you, the mentors who see your potential, and yes, sometimes from the biological ties that find their way back to you, humbled and changed. The world loves a simple story. A villain, a victim, a hero, but real life happens in the gray areas. In the CEO who acts out of both strategy and guilt. In the father whose love was poisoned by insecurity. In the sister who fought for scraps from a table she didn't build. And in the daughter who learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about deciding what you carry forward and what you leave at the door. That journal entry from my grandfather, the one that told me to be brave, to claim the beautiful and terrible world, I think about it every time I face something difficult. He wasn't just talking to me. He was talking to anyone who has ever been told they don't belong, that they're not a priority, that their truth is inconvenient. You have a right to all of it, the love and the loss, the success and the struggle, the family you're born into and the family you build. So here is my question for you as we come to the end of this story. What door do you need to close? And what door are you brave enough to open? The answer might not come today. It might take 5 years. It might look nothing like you imagined. But the power to choose is always yours. Even when you're standing at the back of a chapel, your heart breaking, watching one door slam shut. Look beside you, look ahead. Your next step is waiting. If this story resonated with you, if it touched a memory or a hope or a hurt, tell me in the comments. Share one word that describes your family story. Is it complicated? Healing. Chosen. I read every one. And if you want more real, raw stories about the families we're given and the families we make, hit that subscribe button. Because everyone has a story, and every story deserves to be heard. Thank you for listening to mine.